Great. So we are officially live both on LinkedIn and YouTube. So thank you everybody who joined this event. And before I start explaining what the event is going to be about, in case you cannot hear me properly, just drop a comment right now. But anyways, before we start making questions to Maxine, I just want to leave her a couple of minutes to let her introduce, because Maxine is one of the best guests I had so far. So Maxine, if you don't mind, please, a quick intro of who you are, what you do is going to be much appreciated.
Sure, thanks. I'm Maxine. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Meridian Agency. We're a new social media marketing agency in Helsinki, and we're targeting startups and small businesses. So I originally came from Slush, and all of us have been working in different types of startups, small businesses, the works. And we realized that there was a big issue here where a lot of companies and agencies were relying a lot on paid ads. And we really believe fundamentally that organic social media is one of the ways that you can get people to naturally interact with your brand and really make you top of mind. And no one's prioritizing it in the way that we were wanting it to be prioritized, especially for smaller businesses. So we thought, why don't we just solve that issue? So we came together, we joined forces. And here we are. We're now serving a bunch of different clients in different industries, from food and beverage to high-tech startups, everything. So we believe that basically a lot of this organic social media presence is down to understanding how the algorithms work, and it comes down to understanding how people work and how communities are formed. So it doesn't necessarily need to be specialized in a certain industry to really to work on social media.
Great. So thank you for the intro. And at this point, I can already say, if somebody needs an organic social media marketing agency, please drop a comment to Maxine and let the conversation begin. Great. So a quick intro about who I am in case nobody knows me. My name is Arthur. I'm all about organic content marketing. Have been doing SEO for almost 4 years and have been doing LinkedIn organic for 2.5 years. Okay. That's it in a nutshell what I have been doing. I'm based in Helsinki, working right now on AI plus organic marketing stuff. So thank you for joining this event, and I think that I can move on to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be discussing. As you already know, the event is going to be about how to build a brand on social media that people will love. So how to avoid the corporate cringe, tips and tricks for social medias, how to grow there, what to do, what not to do, and some personal points of view on organic social media coming from Maxine, but that is going to be close to the end of the event. Side note, if you have any question, please don't be shy, drop them in the comments down below. I will try to go through those questions, and we're gonna try to answer them as much as possible. So the intro is done. 5 minutes, we are on the clock. And Maxine, let's start with the first question. What do you think?
Do you want to go first through the why behind building a brand on social, or?
Yeah, so what is your, by the way, side note for the audience, in case you see that I'm looking on the screen, is because I'm looking on the screen. Me and Maxine have decided the questions together just because we don't want to go off topic too much. So I will read the questions on the screen and Maxine is going to answer them. Great. So first question, what is your why behind building a brand on social media, and how does that influence a business?
First off, this is a really big question. I think that for us, we're focusing really organically on how social media works. So for those that might not be aware of what that means in practice, it means not relying on paid ads, focusing exactly on what you put out on your own social media without paying anything extra. And for us, the main reason why we believe brands should be building on social and focusing there is because they need to pave the way of getting themselves top of mind rather than just relying on kind of automated processes to do the job for them. I think that when it comes to our approach to organic social media, we try to build stories and conversations that people will genuinely engage with instead of randomly pushing messaging in front of people that are in your target audience but have no want or need to necessarily engage with those posts. So trying to find genuine ways of creating conversation around your your brand are like essential now that people are being flooded with paid ads and paid promotions continuously. It's a way of getting them to actually engage outside of their regular working hours with your company, for instance, if you're B2B. It's really difficult, but it is well worth it. It's a way of kind of staying top of mind and not having to spend extra money, which is pretty crazy. Like, you don't need to actually do that unless you have a poor organic social strategy. So it's critical to tap into a time frame that people maybe are spending their time getting entertained, for instance, trying to be a brand that goes beyond just the function and go into something that people genuinely feel like they resonate with somehow. They choose to engage with it, so it stays top of mind in their brain continuously. So I think that at least is the why behind why building a brand on social is really important. How it influences a business, I can think, for example, practically in terms of, let's say, local businesses. Local businesses might have a physical presence and they might rely on stuff like foot traffic or something else to get them customers continually coming in. But what's important to note with these kinds of situations that it's more about convenience, right? They end up seeing what's in front of them. Or for instance, maybe they're looking for a lunch place and they search it up right on Google and they see what options come out from that. And that's dependent on SEO and a bunch of other factors that end up weighing into what options come up to them immediately when they're in that decision-making capacity. But the goal of organic social media really is to make them make the decision before they even start searching. So let's say you're a restaurant in the center. You might want to, for example, have a really strong organic social media presence so they don't even search what restaurants are here. They're like, wow, I'm hungry. Oh, I've been craving this one restaurant's meals, right? I could really use that. Or for example, a brand has been so strong that's maybe serving businesses. Like, I have one top of mind that I can think of that I'm always kind of thinking on the daily basis, like, wow, we could really use that. And that's because the content that they put out is really resonating with me as a person. And then now I'm constantly thinking about their brand overall. And then I'm like, yeah, actually they had a really good product. I think I'll be using that. So first, creating conversation that makes you top of mind before you even reach that decision-making process. And when you do, the decision's already handed out to you. So in terms of influence on business, I think that's the main thing that we try to push, that becoming top of mind is the most crucial aspect of it.
Do you think this thing of being top of mind is equally important for both small local businesses, because I see that you manage also restaurants, as for big tech startups?
Yes, I think that everyone can benefit from it in some way. I think that when it comes to local businesses, they arguably have an easier time of developing stories and communities because they have a physical location that they can easily show again and again, and it's recognizable. But I don't see why that can't happen if you target your target audience really effectively and you create conversation that they genuinely want to engage with in their spare time. They will remember you top of mind. They will remember the feeling that they had when they interacted with you. And if they're the right target audience, then they have those pain points you're already addressing through your product. You just have to maybe be a bit more specific with how you target them.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean exactly?
With targeting the core audience?
Yeah.
I think
we are transitioning to the next question.
Yeah, sure.
Go
ahead.
Which is, how do you define your core audience and how does that change what resonates on LinkedIn versus Instagram versus TikTok?
Yeah, this is a really good question. Again, also quite challenging, especially if you consider maybe how businesses might approach it from a B2B perspective versus B2C versus local physical stores. But what I can say regarding the core audiences is there's kind of a twofold approach that we take to understanding the core audiences of any of our companies. The first is understanding that really you can identify a target audience and they won't be resting on certain platforms. They will be likely on all of these different platforms in different frames of mind, So for example, if you're a B2B tech software company, the people that are in your target audience are going to be on LinkedIn, sure, but they're also going to be on Instagram and they might be on TikTok, but they're using those platforms for different purposes. So for example, let's say your target audience is some kind of business person, that maybe an investor, right? VCs, and they're on maybe LinkedIn during work hours in the afternoon. They're there for more maybe professional connections and establishing relationships over time. On Instagram, for instance, this audience is the same, but their reasoning for being there starts changing. They're, for example, following stories developing over time, maybe searching for sources of inspiration, or maybe finding like a quick, entertaining laugh, maybe some memes, something that feels relevant to their community. VC investors love memes too. Surprise, surprise. It's just now their form of consumption has now changed. Same audience, but different way of targeting them. Then finally, I would say TikTok is kind of like any core audience's junk food for the brain. So this goes deeper into maybe company culture, team dynamics, storytelling, stuff that maybe has a bit more chance of going viral, but maybe doesn't have such a strong inspirational feel to it as maybe Instagram would. But in that way, basically, these VCs, for instance, might be more and more on TikTok nowadays to discover information and come across whatever trending audios and videos. But at the same time, it's because they're looking for entertainment. So you cannot just push the same message on all of these different platforms. On LinkedIn, you appeal to their professional work side brain, you know? On Instagram, you're going in the in-between. You're trying to create a story that they can follow over time and appeal to their sense of maybe searching for inspiration, searching for community that they can follow and be part of. And with TikTok, you can really start unpacking stuff regarding your team dynamic, team culture, storytelling in a way that maybe appeals more to the deep entertainment aspect of things. So same core audience, different frames of mind that they're interacting with these different platforms.
So just to recap, to understand if I understood correctly, first of all, so LinkedIn is when the brain is fully focused and work-oriented, in your point of view.
I think very stereotypically, yes. I think that that's what all of these are going by stereotypes. I feel like, for example, a lot more people are searching a bit more for entertainment from LinkedIn now, but that's maybe another conversation. But I think that these are all kind of very black and white ways of viewing things. But yes, I think the stereotype is that LinkedIn's used for that kind of thing and Instagram's stereotypically used for other things. Same with TikTok.
Okay, great. If you should make a concrete example of one type of content, like one type of content for each platform, which these examples would be?
Well, let's say, for example, you're a resource-deficient startup or company that needs to make some content quickly. Usually the order that we would probably go in is start from the perspective of almost script writing. LinkedIn is a great way of kind of taking, for example, a success or failure or something that's happened in the company. Let's say you have founder-led branding or something similar. You have some story of some conference that's taken place and maybe some mistakes that happened during it and some successes. You can treat LinkedIn like a script writing platform. You write your script, you write the text, the post that goes with an image, and you write it and you optimize it for that platform. The chances of that, like writing, matching into then the voiceover of a video on Instagram are very high because the hooks work similarly. People respond similarly to stuff. So for example, instead of having a caption that copies the same way, take that text that you've written on a LinkedIn post, do a voiceover over some videos that were taken at that conference that follow that same hook format that you've done for LinkedIn. And then TikTok have maybe a bit more crazy videos that are intertwined in it, maybe of the party time and that kind of thing to like really appeal to that junk food-esque type of thing that people want to see how the team really works and what it's really like. So in that way, kind of work through a little bit of a funnel, work your way from that script writing written platform format, go to voiceovers, and then add on more moving visuals.
Okay, so I will probably skip the next question, which was, is there any value in finding and onboarding founding community members? Because I see that we started already the conversation about the next question, which is how do you avoid the corporate cringe while still staying professional? And also, side question, is it even possible to end up in the corporate cringe on Instagram and TikTok?
Well, I just had a workshop about this a few days ago, and I went into it an hour and a half about corporate cringe. If I'm honest, I think that we will always be trying to run away from corporate cringe. And I think the chase for authenticity on social media is semi-fake. And as brands, we should accept that. People want to come across as authentic. And all of these brands that have this really strong sense of authenticity, it's curated. All of it is curated to feel authentic. And as brand builders and whatever else, we should be aware of that we are building an image of authenticity. It does not need to be authentic necessarily. I think this is where stuff starts falling apart a little bit, because a lot of companies are so far away from authenticity. I think that maybe in the US and stuff, they're a little bit more with this authenticity conversation. They're a little bit more honest about how things are going. Corporate cringe, I believe at least, comes from a disconnect between the viewers, the marketing materials, and the actual on-the-ground work. So the stuff that's happening in the company. Usually, for example, on-the-ground work will happen. Let's say there's board meetings, there's successes and failures happening inside of the company, exciting things. Then we want to translate these, for example, products, services, updates into marketing materials. And there's a total disconnect from the viewers. There's no, for example, question of what will the viewers want to see. It'll just be like, we have this update that we want to give everyone. We want to sell this stuff. What I recommend first doing is interacting first with viewers. When you're setting up a brand and trying to establish what's going on, establish who your core audience is and understand what they're actually connecting with first, and then form your message around those things. So find out what accounts they're following, conversations they're in, trends they're in, and try to actually create the product and service updates and whatever else to fit around that conversation. Don't create new conversation. Be part of the already existing communities and build, work with them, not against them. I think that a lot of the corporate cringe just from being overly polished, and people are getting better at telling what's coming across as a polished message versus something that feels authentic. And they want to connect to your company personally. They want to know about maybe some of the wins, the losses, and most importantly, tracking development over time. I think that something that any company can take on board is that social media is progressively becoming more like reality TV in a way. You don't need to make things in really strict episodes, but there is value in considering how your story evolves. People will click follow if they want to see your story evolve as a person, as a brand, or whatever else. Even if you're, for example, focused on technology, like for instance, PostHog is an excellent example of balancing this authenticity and development of a story over time. You get a little bit of insight as to how their company is developing. They're not focusing on as a primary way of delivering their information, but they're kind of creating community about letting people know what's going on in a people-oriented manner and really focusing on what their target audience is interacting with and making content based on that.
I don't know if it's allowed, but if I ask you an example of corporate cringe that you remember?
The thing is, usually when it's corporate cringe, I block it out like a traumatic memory. Let's see. Can I think of any corporate cringe? I think that I can probably think back to the companies that I've worked in as well. I think that the companies that I've worked in have had very polished visuals and branding, which look and feel exactly like you would expect. Like they feel like the brand and whatever else, but it's only, the problem is social media doesn't work the same way it did maybe 10 years ago, where when we maybe had a chronological feed, things would come up regardless. If you were following that account, it would just come up whether you like it or not. But now that we're working with algorithms, the problem is a lot of the information rests on the profile when you go to the profile. And the way that social media works now is that you can't rely that people will even go to your profile anymore. You have to try and stay on their feed. So for the companies that I've worked with and the clients that we're working with and trying to change how they're doing things at the moment, the problem is they're maybe using lots of overly polished graphics because they don't want to necessarily use pictures and videos of their team members, for instance. Use that, use actual materials from your team. I think that also trying to share a little bit more about actual updates that are happening in the team on a weekly basis and a monthly basis are a great way of not just focusing on the final polished product, but showing how it's evolving over time. Sometimes, for example, it might be worth even engaging the community to ask them what kind of stuff they want incorporated on these tools, rather than saying this tool is out. What are some things that you really disliked about this and this? And create a conversation in the comments. Build it in public a little bit. Yeah.
You gave me a couple of good ideas that probably I will test already this week because we are building something. So I need to give a bit more space to spontaneous video recording.
Yeah.
Thank you for that idea.
On that note, actually, for video recording, just for also the clients that we've had before, they've usually had very little resources. Try record as much what we call B-rolls as possible. If you're, for example, doing Instagram or some video kind of platform like TikTok, having a bank, just a Google Drive filled with different videos from your team of different activities and stuff that have happened is super valuable, especially when you don't have a lot of resources. And for example, it'll make it easier if you have a script coming from a LinkedIn post to then do a voiceover, because at least you have videos you can use. Even if they're semi-relevant, at least there's something to actually carry over the story, rather than just trying to optimize it for individual posts. Trying to gather everything together in one place is really important.
Okay, I think that I saw a concrete example by visiting Meridian Instagram page, because for example, it was a very interesting video what you offer to your clients, but the b-rolls you featured sometimes were just you and the teammates walking around a place or just sitting on a laptop. You mean that, right?
Yes, exactly. So anything of you walking from bus stop to bus stop, anything from you sitting in a random audience, literally everything. So if you're sitting and doing something in a cafe or something, take a video of yourself. If you're about to start a board meeting or getting materials ready, take a video of yourself. If you've just celebrated some kind of win, take a video of yourself. Take pictures of yourself. I think especially the videos, it takes a little bit longer to do, but it is well worth it as well. If you want to develop something on Instagram, for instance, you have to optimize for videos. Stop posting so many still images. It's not coming up on people's feeds nearly as much. You can start thinking about videos instead. And I am so sad to see so many Finnish companies still stick with pictures so much. Videos, more of them, gather B-rolls, that kind of thing.
Yeah, even a B-roll that, as you said, that is not 100% related.
You can still use it, voiceovers make all of the difference as well. So like if there's just some random videos of you doing stuff that's not related to the video, you can still use it.
Yeah, and you can put a text, a caption on top of the B-roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of also a bit slow to adapt these things because I'm 100% LinkedIn person. So there it's all about text-based and less about video-based.
Yeah.
So I think it takes a good amount of effort to prime your brain to click rec on every single opportunity. But yeah, that's definitely a lot of free impressions.
Yeah. I think that something that LinkedIn people are not taking advantage of as much is that they have inbuilt script writing abilities that work really well on Instagram, for example. So there's like a disconnect between, for instance, the people that are on Instagram and TikTok. It's very difficult to create scripts if you're a very visual person. But on LinkedIn, for example, we've already become script writers, and that translates really well to just holding a microphone over and literally reading out the LinkedIn post. It's as simple as that. It does not get more complicated. If you have, for example, a bunch of B-rolls, that already applies to it. So then you've already done the job. If you're already posting on LinkedIn and then you add on just taking videos, you will have basically the ability to start an Instagram that actually starts building community in the same ways that you've also built it on LinkedIn. Hooks and script writing work very similarly on the different platforms.
Okay, now I'm going a bit off topic, so this is the last question off topic that I make to you. But let's imagine a person wants to start on Instagram. Listen to this idea. I'm talking actually about me here. I take I'm taking videos, like 10 videos by 3 seconds each, taken in on some lake in Finland, and I combine it with a script that is already published on LinkedIn, and the script is about the importance of using AI in B2B marketing. Could it work, you think?
I think that usually when we're trying to build like videos, we try to make them like engaging in a way that doesn't stay the same throughout every single video that shows. So you might, for example, get landscape, video of a person, thing happening, landscape, video of a person, thing happening. We try to cycle through them rather than, for example, having lots of videos of faces, or in your case, lots of videos of the lake, for instance. So I would, for example, switch between them. 3 seconds per video is enough. Usually when we stitch together videos, it sounds insane, but each clip inside of the video is usually around like 2 seconds. So they move very quickly, but that means that a lot is happening and there's a lot of different videos. So that's why it's worth gathering over time a lot and then starting to use them.
Great. Yeah, I need to buy an external hard disk. Thank you for the tip.
All right, to gather all of it together.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next question.
Yeah.
Do you build in public? do you share wins? Do you suggest sharing wins, losses, mistakes? And when does it serve your brand and when it does not serve your brand?
This is a tricky one because I feel like sometimes building in public, it's seen really positively in the startup ecosystem, and we do build in public. The problem is, again, just like I was saying about authenticity earlier, this is a manufactured appearance of building in public. Like, for example, when Meridian, we build in public, we do share wins, losses, mistakes, but we do curate it as well. So I would hardly say that it's fair to just say, just build in public and share the wins, losses, that kind of thing, because there are things that, for example, could damage your PR. Maybe you didn't do something great with your hiring process. Maybe you didn't pay enough for this person or something else, some kind of PR risky thing. Would you bring that up? Maybe not. Maybe you should deal with it before actually bringing it up in public. We at least haven't had many situations where there's been like maybe some mistake that we've made or something else that wouldn't be shareable, luckily, but I do see a lot of brands kind of like being confused about what building in public means. Do I still have you on the...
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah. Okay.
It
It's
was
just frozen for a little bit.
just
Yeah.
3 seconds. Keep going.
I think that what we try to do to try and make sure that we publish about our journey is plan out in advance the amount of posts that we'll be doing per week. So this is probably around 2 or 3 a week. And we narrow down which post, for example, will focus on a success or an event, which one will focus on a mistake, and which one will do this. So we have very functional, like, these 3 posts going out this week have these 3 focuses. So that then results in there not being too much of a focus on the mistakes and problems and not too much of a focus on the successes and the wins. We try to find a balance between all of that. I think that's what building in public at least means to me, is creating an image that gives you a fair view of everything that's happening. And I think that it's fair to also not go too far into all of the wins and stuff, because then that comes across as arrogant, but also not leaning too heavily into the mistakes and stuff, because then that can also cause PR problems and lots of controversy and issues.
Okay, let's talk about concrete examples, because my mind is wired for LinkedIn. So I know what we are talking about when I need to share wins,
Yeah.
when we need to share losses. But let's focus also about Instagram and TikTok. How can any brand, I'm not focusing on B2B, B2C, D2C, how any brand, what kind of wins and losses can a brand share on Instagram? Or maybe, I leave it like this. If you want a more specific question, I already have it.
Yeah. Let me think.
Let's focus to help you. Maybe let's focus on one niche, which on 2 niches.
Yeah.
A local restaurant, just pick randomly, and a tech startup. But these 2 businesses, they want to focus on Instagram and TikTok.
Okay. I think in both cases, TikTok is kind of like the deep behind the scenes type of angle. So you're building a story around what's truly, truly happening. So this is mostly the oversharing platform of some sort. There's a lot of flexibility with what happens on TikTok because people generally don't follow or track accounts that much on TikTok. It's more what's happening at the moment on the For You page. So I would say on the deep end of really sharing stuff that's truly happening, more mistakes, that kind of thing, that's your flexible platform, whether you've got a restaurant or something else. Instagram is slightly more curated and it's meant to be a representation of your lifestyle, for instance, or whatever the brand that you're coming across as. So when people like and engage with it, it's also not just a signifier of what they're enjoying, but they also know that other people are seeing what they're interacting with and they want it to be a representation of them. So for example, if they find maybe a certain video is maybe too much oversharing, they might not want to interact with it per se because it might associate with them with something more controversial or something else. But on TikTok, there is a total anonymity with who's interacting with what. So you can feel free to share more of those deeper building in public stories, for instance. But yeah, I think overall, when it comes to just building in public, it requires some level of understanding PR. And I think oversharing happens when you don't evaluate effectively for PR. You should map out the potential problems that come from sharing a particularly negative story, for instance.
Right. Yeah. I was taking this thing for granted, like be balanced about wins and losses, and I was implicitly doing it. But maybe some people are oversharing their wins, and this is a very good thing that you just shared.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's time to move to the next question. You already mentioned something, but what are some top tactics for getting your content seen by the right audience?
Yeah.
Now, I want to make the things easier for you. Do you prefer to narrow down on one specific social media, organic social media, or would you like to include all the three major one?
I think all the three major ones, there's one clear learning that I think everyone can take away from this is, and it seems simple at first, but it actually is something that companies are not doing. You should find out what your core audience is actually interacting with. Too often do we see companies assuming what their target audience is interacting with and just going along with that. Make a fake account. Pretend you're actually your target audience. Research the trends they're engaged with, the accounts that they're following, the conversations they're in. Stop just shoving your product or service in their face and actually find out what conversations they're in, who they're following and why they're following them. I find that every time, for example, I've done marketing for a different company previously, we've kind of just assumed that these are the pain points, but when they're interacting, for example, on Instagram, they're not searching for those pain points at all to be addressed through those conversations. They want, for example, them to be addressed in other ways. Take some time to actually understand what these accounts are dealing with. Identify, for example, if you're on LinkedIn, identify your ideal customer profiles. Who are actual real people on the platform? What accounts are they connected with? Who are they commenting on regularly, for instance? What are they sharing? What are they asking about? And do that again and again for different accounts, different, for example, platforms. You can do that on Instagram, for instance. So actually find out what they're talking inside of. Where are they leaving comments and why, and then base it on that. I think we just as marketers assume we know best. Go back to the basics, back 60, 80 years when market research first became really popular, and try to actually go into asking the customer, what are they actually interacting with? Maybe ask some of your customers, what accounts do they like the most? Why do they like them the most? What comments are they leaving? Do they leave comments? For example, maybe they aren't someone that interacts so much with the post, but they really like reading comment sections, right? I'm a sucker for comment sections. I love seeing the conversation around posts. I don't care necessarily just for the post itself. So if you understand what your customers are interacting with, you can then understand how to pose the product or service in a way that actually will get received.
Okay, great. This is definitely an important one. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I felt a lot the philosophy of still like an artist. So see what the top creators are doing and just try to make it yours.
I think that there's especially on LinkedIn, there's a lot of this stealing from the artist type of thing. I think that works a lot, but I also think that there's room for brands to prioritize understanding where their customers are coming from, rather than, for example, there's the mistake that some make where they copy others that are in the field doing the same thing, and they look above instead of looking below to all of the customers and what they're interacting with. So you might look toward these aspirational thought leaders that you then imitate, but in reality, a lot of your core customers might not actually aspire to these people. They aspire to this other group, and because you didn't interact with them or even ask or sit down with them, you never found out what they actually interact with. So in the way that you would, for example, approach improving a product or something, like you would ask the customer, what do you hate about this product, that kind of thing, and try to get feedback. You could do the same for their social media use. You can ask them, what accounts do you love to follow in this industry? Why do you follow them? What conversations are you part of? What stuff do you like? Do you like anything? Is that even, for example, something, maybe it's a group of people like Gen Alpha that doesn't actually engage with anything. They don't like anything. Everything is private. And it's kind of like understanding how they interact in the first place will also give you an idea of what kind of key performance indicators actually reflect how your customers are interacting with products and services on those platforms.
Great. I will listen this part of the podcast over and over again. Thanks so much. Yeah, because I need to give more importance to listening the comments. That is just a gold mine of content ideas, pain points, and stuff. Because I usually find content ideas by watching the top content creators.
Yeah.
And I take for granted that there is nothing else. Because analyzing the comments takes time, a lot of time. But maybe down there you can find a very viral content idea.
Yeah.
So I will try to sneak a bit more inside that
Yeah,
section.
looking at other people's content sections and comment sections is really important. And I think that there are some platforms like TikTok that are really good at showing you what kind of conversations people are part of. You can find out the types of questions they're asking and stuff and create content about that and then insert your product or service into that. So find the conversations first and then create content from there rather than looking above and then making. Look below and then make.
Cool, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can move to the. Okay, so let's move to the next question. We call them hacks, but sometimes they're not hacks; they're just repetitive tasks. But
Yeah.
anyways, are there hacks you have used like time of post, content hooks, or engagement loops? All things that you even suggest to the audience to follow.
Yeah, well, I think stuff like hacks, they are short-term things that can help, for example, boost the initial phase of building a brand a bit more. I feel like people struggle a lot at that initial first few months of developing their brand or rebranding, and stuff like, for example, posting at times that people are likely to engage. That works, especially like in the short term of making it feel a little bit more bearable. In the grand scheme of things, in the long-term development of the brand, it's not going to make a difference. But in that short-term boost of wanting to find reason to continue going, pushing at the right times is very good. Usually we just try to think about when those target audiences are likely to engage. So for example, professionals on LinkedIn might be just before lunch or right after lunch rather than midnight or 3 a.m., But for example, these things can be thrown out the window. Sometimes I might post at random times. Like for example, there was one of my most popular posts went out at like 1:30 a.m. and it became my biggest post and it was very controversial. But like it did not matter at that time that it was like about the time frame. It was about the content in that way. I think that if you find you're over relying on hacks for too long, something is fundamentally flawed in the type of content that you're putting out. Not saying that, for example, there's something maybe like wrong, but maybe there's an angle that you can tweak that can make it stand more the long-term test of time. I, for example, like to compare social media to like algorithmically following a reality show where there's a strong enough story of some sort that people follow over time that will really trump any short-term engagement strategies. So for example, you might think that maybe a thought leader posts these individual posts that are really aspirational, some quotes or some learnings or something, but underneath that there is a sense of wanting to follow the realizations that that person has come through over time, over their career. For example, in this position they're the director of XYZ corporation. You want to see what kind of learnings they come across over time. You want to be invested in their story as this professional that's done these really big things. So in some way there's always a sense of story, there's always a sense of consistency and recognizability across all of them. And even if, for example, it doesn't develop in an episodic manner, it should always be recognizable to you. So that means that, like, for example, short-term things, you can focus on it, especially at the beginning, posting before midday and after midday, for instance, on LinkedIn. But if you find that after half a year, for example, those things are making a huge difference in how things are performing, then maybe you should reevaluate the type of strategy that you have so that you can last longer term rather than just relying on time frames, for instance.
Okay, yeah, I don't make you questions about LinkedIn because I know some things, but I would like to focus, for example, on Instagram. Instagram is that black box for me that I don't really understand if it even gives a chance of growing, because TikTok, in my view, is much more generous for when it comes to free impressions.
Yeah.
But Instagram seems to be very picky, maybe because they are over relying on ads for their annual revenue. Don't know why.
Yeah, that could be.
But if you should give one, let's say 2 tips to focus on to grow on Instagram, which these tips would be?
Was it 2 tips?
Yeah, just 2. Yeah, just 2.
All right. Okay. Well, I'd first like to, before starting with the two, I'd like to dissuade brands maybe from focusing too much on maybe branding their fonts on videos or adding a logo or something to connect them to the brand. It comes across as overly polished, commercialized. People are not engaging. Remember this, the interaction that someone has with a video is a signifier of the lifestyle and stuff that they have and they want other people to see. If they see that it's really commercial and it's trying to sell them something, they won't interact with it. So try to keep things as native as possible to the actual platform. It looks like any other individual, like a person, not a brand. But something that brands that stand out on Instagram do really well is they do consistency. And I don't mean just necessarily maybe in terms of just topics, but for example, repeated hooks at the beginning of their video, or for example, the same location, right? Some accounts that have done really well is like the LED factory in China, I think it is, that has the same hooks at the beginning of every single video. There might be, for example, in our case, if we have a certain restaurant, we prioritize this type of way of eating, like mukbangs, for example. If that's our new content pillar, people will see the mukbang in Finland and they will recognize it. They don't even need to see the name. They just see the video and they recognize that consistent posting, it's probably that account. That can also be done through people or whatever else. But I really would encourage companies to think about what is a piece of content that they can test, or maybe two pieces of content that consistently have the first starting point being the same all the time. That's how you really grow a following. Because remember how I was saying that this is like a TV show of some sort? You can approach the first 3 seconds like a TV show intro, the dun 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 dun, like the stuff at the beginning that has the credits of some sort at the beginning. Think of those first 3 seconds like that when you're in another room, right, you can hear that, the show is starting, right? You get a recognition that your body feels ready almost to see it. You're tuning in for your favorite episode, right? That's where it leads me to kind of the second point. The 3 seconds, businesses overlook them so much. You have to prioritize the first 3 seconds. The algorithm is dependent on how many people stay watching after the first 3 seconds. If the content is good in the first 3 seconds and that introduction is great, you will get people to stay longer. But if Instagram sees people are dropping off after 3 seconds, no one else will see the video. It will drop off from everyone else's feeds. So Instagram's not fair in that way, that it's not going to give you a chance. If they see no one's interacting, they will give it to no one. So you have to give something back. You have to give them something that will make people stay and watch videos for longer on their platform. So think more seriously about those first 3 seconds. It's not a side aspect to this. This is, the 3 seconds is almost more important than the whole content itself, unfortunately, based on how it works at the moment. These things might change. I don't necessarily feel like it's the best way of people consuming content as humans. I don't think our brains are developed for this over the long term. But at the moment, if you want to succeed, there are certain things like those 3 seconds that you really need to think seriously about. Don't just pretend those 3 seconds don't exist. That's what everything is now based on at the moment. Think of it like the beginning of a TV show that is recognizable to you even from another room.
Mm-hmm. And here, tell me if I'm wrong, but I would highly recommend somebody to use templates that already work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's lots of formats that already work. Test them out. Even, for example, the same industry in another country. Maybe there's an account that's gone really well there. What have they done? Could you do something similar in Finland? Could you do something similar in Sweden? Probably, because that's how humans work. We are very similar across different places. So think also, for example, if there's a very similar account in another industry in the same geography, test it out. Do a little bit of research about what's already worked and see if you can try and integrate it into your own work. But it has to be native to the platform. You cannot make it look very branded. Otherwise, it is not coming up on other people's feeds.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, I think we got enough about this question.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe we covered this already in part, but I would like to make it again. How do you fine-tune content formats for LinkedIn versus Instagram Reels versus TikTok? Let's give some practical format tips and potentially even some idea if it's possible to swap content from one platform to the other.
I think that, as I was saying before, a funnel approach is really effective. You can, for example, use LinkedIn as a way of producing hooking and catchy scripts through a written format, and then, for example, post it with an image. Then you adapt the script to Instagram, keeping some of the professional tone, but then suit it with another visual prompt that's video. And then finally, you strip the script bare, so you try to lay down the most entertaining and hooking aspects of that script for TikTok. So every time you come up with a new idea, you can funnel it through that same thing. Start with the script from LinkedIn and work your way down and add different types of visual media for each.
Okay, great. So LinkedIn is your point of view, starting point, just because of the text based.
Yeah, I think so. Because anyway, you're going to be script writing for Instagram and TikTok. And I've found that there's a lot of, they mirror each other in terms of how people are hooked in, surprisingly. So.
Okay, and here, a more specific question. In my redistribution thing, I started testing it very recently with this kind of podcasts. So expect to see this kind of videos, vertical videos with your supercharged energy being shared on LinkedIn and on TikTok at the same time. Now, on TikTok, I just started, so the algorithm is telling me who are you, so it's not giving me free impressions at all. Do you think, on the long run, could this type of redistribution work? Like the same content for both LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok, like completely the same? Or is completely a no, a big no?
I found that video content that performs really well on LinkedIn has been quite heavily edited. If you have really engaging edits, then yes, it probably can apply for all of them. But in these cases, like for example, these thought leaders that have these really cool looking engaging videos from, for example, their podcast or something, they have a professional video editor. They have someone that literally sits there and just does video editing. And that's why it looks so cool. You might be wondering, why does that podcast perform so much better than mine, where it's really, stagnant, for instance, and there's not a lot of stuff happening? It's because they've just hired a full video editor, and that's their whole thing. I would say that because I've seen so many companies try to do the same, I would only consider kind of applying the same videos if you have a video editor that can tweak them for the individual places. I think that you may as well kind of not prioritize certain platforms if you're not looking to actually hone in on them and make them really good, because the problem is it can reflect poorly on your brand if people are not engaging. Remember how I was saying earlier about how people want to see what conversation is happening and what's happening with the engagement? If they see the engagement is really low, they will see that as a social standing of your brand. So if you have content that doesn't perform well, that will reflect poorly on your brand in some way. So if you want to do it, be intentional about it. And if, for example, you find that a certain platform performs really well, just double down on that. When you're ready to go to another platform, open that up. I would say don't try stretch yourself thin, because then you're going to perform semi-okay on all of them. You may as well just have a few points of contact that your customer can see, wow, the social standing of this brand is really high, versus, oh, you got 10 likes on Instagram. Doesn't seem like lots of people are watching you here. I don't know if they really like your stuff. It looks a bit poor. So in that way, that might, for example, sound harsh. And at the beginning, it might, for example, the performance might be like that, but over the long term, it should not perform that way. And if it is, you're not tapping into the conversations that are actually happening on those platforms. So if you have, for example, a podcast or something else that's recorded, genuinely consider that if you get 10 likes, is that going to affect your social standing? Maybe you shouldn't post that thing.
Great. Yeah, probably I will cancel my TikTok account after this live.
I think that there's always room. People underestimate the value of, for example, getting a freelance video editor that understands short-term video content. Even, for example, booking them for 2 hours, 3 hours, for example, a week. That's what, for example, the really famous podcasters do. They have a team of video editors, and that sometimes it's not even the quality of what they're saying that makes them stand out. It's the video editors that have made something look really boring into something really engaging. So what I would encourage some people to do, that if you have any extra resources, a video editor is well worth it if you, for example, have podcasts or something else. And that's how the big guys do it when they're, for example, trying to become a thought leader through podcasts. They have video editors doing it. That's why the YouTubers became such a big thing in the 2010s, because they had video editors doing excellent video editing.
Yeah, that's a hard switch in my mind because I give a lot of weight to the words rather than to the
Yeah, it's a tough
spec
one.
F, spec effects. Yeah, because I can personally listen to what you are saying right now, even on Spotify.
Yeah.
I still get a ton of value out of it, so I don't need special effects. But the
Yeah.
market seems to be going in another direction. So
Yeah, and I mean, this is a temporary algorithmic switch, so you can see that this is also something that might not be relevant in the next few years. Like I was predicting a few days ago that Substack, I feel like, is going to be really popular in the future, and Substack influencers are going to be huge, and that's heavy on writing and text, and I feel like that's because it's just become like all of the ways of getting social media have become so oversaturated with video content, even LinkedIn is trying to push it, that people might now start navigating towards more written form and longer form, because then they can go deeper over a shorter amount of time. So
yeah, I totally agree on that. Indeed, I'm a daily Substack reader, and I truly enjoy that.
I am
So
too. I love my Substack. Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of value there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're approaching the end.
Yeah.
So we have some few questions left. Okay, so let's make an example of a brand where there's social, broad, tangible results in terms of community growth, but even just brand growth. If you should mention two examples, I don't know why I'm stuck with two. Let's go with three, with one. I don't know, make one.
Yep, I can start with one. I think that I can give, I find it hard that if I can't see what the revenue would be of a certain company, that I can see maybe from the outside that it's performed well. But one that we've done, again, I've mentioned it earlier, is we had a live stream mukbang for one of our clients. And that led to multiple customer bookings at the restaurant during the live stream. So people actually called during the live stream and booked a table and stuff. And it got thousands of likes and hundreds of simultaneous views. That was something that was a risk. I encourage companies to take more risk when it comes to presenting things. That was the first of its kind in Finland. And in itself, that has been existing for years in other countries. Look at other geographies. What we've done is not revolutionary in the grand scheme of things, but it is revolutionary here. Look at what's in your country and what's not in your country. You know, this whole thing with freaking Dubai chocolate, it's all marketing in the end. Is it worth buying a 10 euro Dubai chocolate bar? Probably not, right? But at the same time, it's all built on that. With the live stream mukbang, I think that was driven by it being a new format, live streaming, and responding to community. A lot of the brands that we work with are focused on responding to actual comments and making videos based on comments. And when, for example, there are no comments, we generate comments as well from ourselves of stuff that we like assume viewers might actually ask, right? So we actually try to make, for example, a third of the content for some clients just focused on answering questions and creating content from there. So when it comes to this live stream, I think that source of new revenue and stuff that's coming in now, this mukbang live stream will be happening regularly with different visiting guests. But I think that something from here that was important is that it was a very community oriented execution. And the more important thing was not just having the camera there and having it run while you're doing something. We're answering questions actively with the community, and they responded really well to that.
Amazing. How often do you think you will repeat this live event?
Every few weeks to every month. If we want to stick with something, it has to be consistent. So that, for example, that live stream, it's very visually engaging. It's a seafood boil in a bag, and it's very colorful and red. So in that way, it hooks people in immediately, but it's recognizable to the restaurant setting as well. And the people in the video are people that have been in videos and content before. So having consistently the same people and consistently the same location is really important to then basically draw people in and know that it's that brand before even reading the name. So how do you create things inside of your videos that your community recognizes without looking at your name?
And which social, which place, which database do you suggest to go to find these foreign content ideas?
I think I would honestly just, if it's, for example, hard question. I think the search engines on LinkedIn and Instagram suck majorly. I think TikTok is probably the best of the different social media search engines, and it's getting better. These are slowly improving. I would say that usually when we're trying to look at different geographies, we try to like specifically say in TikTok, for instance, the country of a certain place, and then the name of a certain customer that we're serving, like a certain industry. So, for example, industry plus Germany or Deutschland or whatever. Or for example, if it's LinkedIn, you might want to find certain people that are in that same industry or something that are posting from similar competitors but are not in your area, for instance. What kind of stuff are they putting out that people are responding to really well? Go ahead and translate stuff, Translation's great too, but really try to find what people are actually interacting with. I think that's the most important thing.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for the idea. I need to test it a bit more. Great. So let's move on to the last question.
Yeah.
So let's look ahead to 2025, 2026. And if you only had to choose if you'd mention one strategy to build a memorable brand on social media, what would it be and why?
I would have recommended world building, and story building has become really popular, but I think that that's at the moment. There are certain things that are starting to maybe whittle away a little bit at how community is built on these social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok, for instance, where maybe if you follow a certain account, you won't be seeing their feeds, their feed posts very often. So I would say instead of maybe building a story around your brand per se, I think that you should create conversation consistently around your products and services, not just actually pushing the product or service. So if you, for example, have a certain product update, don't just say, we have this product update. Create conversation around the product update. Maybe do it in phases. Like, for example, starting with, we're thinking of updating our product. What do you guys think? What are the worst things about our product, right? Get a bunch of comments in, write and comment back and be like, oh, we've taken note, blah, blah, blah. Next phase, then gather together different options that have been brought up in the comments. Make a poll. What do you guys think we should prioritize? People vote. Then you finally say, we've unveiled this new product update, take a look. It might not necessarily align with what your community has asked for directly, but you've created conversation around the product update. You have not just spewed the content update. Because I think that here, like now on social media platforms, regardless of the industry, we have to prioritize what people are talking about and what they want to engage with, not just push stuff and hope for the best. That was maybe in 2012. We're now in 2025. We are a little bit behind at the moment. We can all catch up together, but it requires creating conversation around the products and services, not just the products and services alone.
Cool. Yeah, you mentioned 2012, and I thought about one thing immediately, Retrica. You remember the app Retrica on the iPhone?
No, I don't remember.
Okay, maybe in this part of the world it was not a thing, but in Italy we were taking the selfies using a third-party software for some reason. So all the selfies you were taking, they were having the badge of Retrica with this software.
Right, yeah.
Strange times back then.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think we covered all the questions. 1 hour is over. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So, guys, people, thank you very much for joining the event. Maxine, thank you very much for being with us for 1 hour. And in case somebody has some questions, this live is going to be published on LinkedIn, on YouTube. Feel free to reach us out. And in case you need somebody for organic social media management, just drop a message to Maxine and let's start the conversation there.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, Maxine, can I push on stop or would like to leave one last quote?
I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to say, but I think that the most important thing is just creating conversation around your products and services. And I hope to see more Finnish companies actually following that and doing things a little bit differently, looking outside of this little bubble here.
Yeah, Great. I agree. Great. So let's stop the live.